The desert of Beersheba. The God who hears in the place of despair. Welcome, beloved seekers of truth, to this exhaustive, deep-layer journey into the heart of the book of the beginning. Genesis. Today we enter three of the most emotionally charged and spiritually dense verses in the entire biblical canon. Genesis chapter 21, verses 15 through 17. This is the pericope of the threshold. It is the precise moment where human endurance shatters, where the waterskin of our own effort runs dry, and where the divine voice breaks the silence of the wilderness. This passage sits at the intersection of family trauma, covenant theology, divine mercy, and human survival. We are stepping into a landscape of absolute depletion. A landscape where mothers are broken and children are left in the dust. This is not a quick reading. This is a slow, sacred excavation meant to meet you in your own wilderness places, to heal what has run dry, and to awaken fresh thirst for the Spirit who opens eyes to wells already present. We enter this section with Hagar and Ishmael alone. The camp, the feast, Abraham's silhouette, all are gone. Only heat, thirst, silence, and the boy's weakening cries remain. The sun blazes over the Negev. The air shimmers. Maternal strength collapses. Part 1. Verse 15. The Vayiklu moment and the collapse of provision. Verse 15. When the water in the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of the bushes. The linguistic deep dive. Let us pause at the very first phrase. Vayiklu hamayim bachemet. And the water was finished in the skin. The verb vayiklu is the Kalim perfect third-person masculine plural from the root kala. This root denotes to be completed, to be at an end, to be consumed, or to be exhausted. In the kal stem, it indicates simple factive action. The resources did not gradually diminish. They ceased to exist. In wider Semitic literature, including Aramaic and Ugaritic texts, kala is used to describe the total consumption of a sacrifice or the irrevocable completion of a decree. The use of the imperfect with the vav consecutive creates narrative flow, signaling that this depletion is the necessary catalyst for what follows. It marks the point of no return, a threshold of absolute human limitation. The noun kemet refers to a waterskin, derived from the root chama, meaning to be hot, suggesting a vessel designed specifically to protect precious liquid from the desert sun. Typically crafted from a whole goat or sheep hide, the hide was carefully removed, minimally cut to preserve integrity, then tanned with pomegranate or salt, and sewn with sinew. The neck served as the spout. A kemet held roughly 2 to 5 liters. In the searing Negev heat, this amount would last less than 48 hours for 2 people. The Masoretic cantillation marks place as akef kata on hamayim, creating an audible pause. This forces the listener to sit with the void. The provision of the patriarch is now a dry hide. Archaeological evidence from Bronze Age sites in the Negev confirms sophisticated leatherworking practices, reinforcing the realism of this scarcity. The second action is vatashvuch, from the root shalak. This is the hafil imperfect third feminine singular. The hafil stem is causative. She caused the child to go. She flung. She cast. This verb carries the violent necessity of desperation. She can no longer bear the physical or emotional weight of the dying. The object, it hailed, the child, is presented with the definite article, emphasizing the specificity of the promised child, though not the heir. From Hagar's perspective, he remains eternally her child, dependent and vulnerable. Historical and legal context. The Negev desert is arid and unforgiving. Summer temperatures exceed 38 degrees Celsius, and survival without water compresses to 24 to 36 hours. Dehydration progresses from fatigue, cognitive impairment, reduced urine output, delirium, and eventually organ collapse. Hagar makes decisions in a state of physiological crisis. Ancient Near Eastern legal norms, including the Code of Hammurabi and Mutsi texts, suggest that while a slave wife could face punishment, total expulsion was an extreme measure. Abraham's provision of bread and water represents the bare minimum, legal compliance without causing blood guilt. It is sufficient for survival but insufficient for wandering. Every provision reflects covenantal responsibility and human limitations. This moment shows the tension between human justice, survival, and divine mercy. Patristic and mystical layer. Origen interprets the water's depletion as symbolic of the insufficiency of the law. Hagar represents the Old Covenant. When the waters of the letter are exhausted, the soul must seek the living water. Augustine sees the earthbound city, represented by Hagar, relying on finite human provisions which inevitably fail. He notes the violence of the word through as the despair of finite systems confronted by mortality. John Chrysostom emphasizes that Hagar is not judged. Depletion happens despite human diligence. Ambrose notes that Scripture records human failure to model honesty before God. Gregory of Nyssa highlights the spiritual preparation in the wilderness. Absence leads to mystical longing. The depletion is a sacred pedagogical space. The void itself is a teacher of reliance, humility, and divine dependency. Psychological and healing dimension. Hagar is a securely attached mother experiencing a violent disruption, creating disorganized attachment. The caregiver is simultaneously a source of safety and witness to terror. Trauma literature, including Bessel van der Kolk, notes that the body keeps the score. Hagar has shifted from hyperarousal to hyperarousal, a total shutdown. Throwing the child is the last desperate act before collapse. In a healing reflection, consider the area in your life where you have abandoned hope because you could not bear the weight. Jesus meets you there, validating the surrender, carrying what you cannot carry, and teaching your soul to trust again. Affirm, my weakness is not rejection. My surrender is an invitation to divine grace. My emptiness is fertile for the living water. Christ-centered and discipleship synthesis. The Kemet's emptiness foreshadows the insufficiency of earthly provisions and the need for Christ, the living water. Jesus allows us to face our emptiness to awaken dependence on Him. Our deepest crises become thresholds for divine intervention. In your life, depletion is not the end but the prelude to a miracle. Every broken place can become a place where Christ carries you. Every desolate place is a classroom for discipleship, teaching patience, trust, and intimacy with God. Let your trials cultivate a Christ-like endurance that shapes your heart for service, empathy, and love for others. Part 2. Verse 16. The bowshot distance and the voice of grief. Verse 16. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot. For she said, let me not look upon the death of the child. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. The linguistic deep dive. Lone-edged rechoke keshet is geographically and emotionally precise. Lone-edged denotes being opposite, in view. Rechoke from rachik indicates distance. Keshet, the bow, defines a span roughly 50 to 100 meters, where one can see a body but not hear its breath. Vatiza, she lifted, is the hefil of Nasa, culturally a loud lamentation. Vatavaik, calimperfect of Baker, indicates ongoing sobbing. This is emotional distance translated into spatial language. The bowshot is not just a measurement, it is the metric of trauma coping. The distance preserves the fragile system while acknowledging sorrow. Patristic and mystical layer. Gregory of Nazianzus teaches that God's tool is to break self-sufficiency. Gregory of Nyssa frames this stage as darkness before mystical union. Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross liken this desert to the dark night of the soul. Hagar sitting at a distance embodies the soul stripped of consolations, preparing for intimacy with God. Ambrose and Augustine remind us that God allows emotional distance to facilitate divine reliance. The physical distance mirrors the inner spiritual threshold where one learns to depend fully on God. Distance can become a sanctuary for the spirit to act. Psychological and healing dimension. Hagar's placement is trauma-avoidant behavior. The shield of dissociation protects her from unbearable sights. In a healing reflection, notice where you have emotionally distanced yourself from your pain. Jesus occupies the gap, bridging your isolation. He sits in the wilderness with you. Positive affirmations, my grief is not invisible. God sees me at every bowshot distance. I am allowed to weep. Exhaustion is not the end of my story. I am embraced by the Spirit. My sorrow is witnessed. My soul is protected and strengthened. My distance is not separation from God but a threshold to encounter Him. Christ-centered and discipleship synthesis. Hagar's refusal to look foreshadows the bowshot distance of the disciples at the cross. Christ lifts his voice from abandonment to redemption. He enters our isolation, bridging the distance of despair. The casting off becomes a calling to follow him. Every distance between you and God is a bridge he is building. Your desert space, your emotional distance, is a classroom for forming Christ-like patience, compassion, and empathy. Let the Spirit teach you to reach out in trust, even when your eyes cannot see the path ahead. Part 3. Verse 17. The God of the Asher Husham. Verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Fear not. For God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. The linguistic deep dive. Vayishma Elohim, and God heard. Kal imperfect of Shama, to hear with intent to act. Hagar wails, yet God hears the lad, et shel hana. The lad has not spoken, vulnerability itself becomes prayer. The Malak Elohim calls min Hashemayim, from heaven. Malak, what ails you, Hagar, is an intimate inquiry. Al-Tiri, fear not, is nifl imperative, calming the nervous system. Asher Husham, where he is, emphasizes divine omniscience. God's attention is precise, localized, and present. Every cry, every tear, every silent plea is registered in the heart of God. Patristic and mystical layer. Gregory Palamas speaks of uncreated energies piercing despair. Martin Luther emphasizes that the gospel comes to those at the brink, not the strong. John Calvin highlights covenant faithfulness. Thomas Aquinas demonstrates divine mercy extends universally. Origen and Augustine underscore the sufficiency of God's provision when human means fail. The darkness of the desert is illuminated by divine attention. Every detail of human suffering is seen and validated. Psychological and healing dimension. God provides a corrective emotional experience. He functions as the ultimate secure base. Hagar is validated in her helplessness. In a healing reflection, speak your truth to the Father. Positive affirmations. The Creator hears what I cannot voice. I am not alone in my wilderness. God responds to my need. Vulnerability invites divine intervention. My emptiness is fertile. My weakness is transformative. Every moment of despair can become a sanctuary for the Spirit to renew, strengthen, and equip me for discipleship. Christ-centered and discipleship synthesis. The angel of God is the pre-incarnate Christ. He speaks into the void. This verse fulfills the new covenant promise: God will be found by those who did not seek him. Jesus became the lad under the bush, embodying human vulnerability and divine attention. Your desert becomes the place of encounter. Christ's presence transforms abandonment into intimacy. Every cry under your bush is heard by him. Your emptiness becomes a classroom for Christ-like character, for resilience, for patience, for compassion. Let the Spirit use every trial to form you into a disciple, thirsty for God, sensitive to his presence, and full of love for others. Guided meditation and reflective integration. Close your eyes and breathe slowly. Imagine the empty water skin, the bowshot distance, the voice of the lad. Let the Spirit reveal hidden wells in your life. Every depletion is a call to depend on Christ. Every distance is a bridge he builds. Every silent plea is heard and valued. Feel his presence, his sustaining grace, his gentle call to follow him into life, healing, and discipleship. Affirm, I am seen, I am heard, I am loved. The Spirit fills my emptiness. My vulnerability is my invitation to divine restoration. My life is a living well for others. As you walk forward, know this: you are no longer an exile in the desert. You are a guest at the table of the King. Your grief is a threshold. Your weakness is a conduit. Your abandonment is the setting for divine intervention. Receive this healing. Let it restore your soul. Let it inspire you to become more Christ-like, Spirit-filled, and a disciple whose thirst for God only grows. Let your emptiness become the arena of his glory. Let your suffering become the soil of grace and transformation. Stay tuned for the next video at the end.